Gotcha.
I have spent half a century farming Kulve Taroth. That's right, because I have to have every Rarity 8 weapon that she can drop, and that means that the RNG is going to give me 100 of one of those weapons and 0 of the one that I'm interested in, because that's how RNG feels like. Right, so we've all been grinding Kulve Taroth for a while. Here's a list of changes I'd like to see made to Kulve Taroth, and include some ideas that probably should be applied to whatever the developers have in mind next. So if they're going to have another siege, another big siege fight with another big monster, some of these ideas directly apply to that. I want to mention that the list is not ordered, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just get started. Starting us off, I'd like to see the developers implement something that discourages players from jumping from lobby to lobby, right? So a major idea for the Kulve Taroth Siege was 16-man, kind of like raid mode, right? Of course, but you don't actually see anybody other than in the lobby, so it really doesn't feel like a raid. It really does feel like just a 4-man event, and the people in your session happen to increase your odds of a reward. Like if you fail to cut the horns off, but your reward level is 15 and somebody else does cut the horns off, that kind of thing, right? So, that whole design hasn't been very intuitive. It doesn't feel very engaging. And honestly, what it did was it created kind of a situation where the players who do know what's going on, they're jumping from lobby to lobby in order to get into a session where the pursuit level is already like at level 3. Right, or higher probably, because they know if they get in with decent players or they solo it, they can just beat it now in one run. And I feel like while that might be the smartest thing to do given the circumstances, it's probably not what the developers intended, and they ought to do something to make it so that it plays the way that they did intend. Maybe they can increase your rewards for starting at pursuit level 1 and staying in the same lobby all the way to pursuit level 6. That would probably fix it right there, because really what everybody's doing this for, after you've done it like 10 times in a row, you're really just doing it for the rewards. You're grinding. You know what I mean? So yeah, the way the lobbies are constantly, you see this flow of people coming and going, trying to get lucky and run into a pursuit 3 is very annoying and very discouraging. It feels like people are leeching. So I would hope that the developers learn from this. This is the first time they've done this, of course, so I'm not criticizing them entirely. I think that the whole siege has been, in most regards, a great success. But yeah, this is just a little thing, and hopefully they do address it. Issue number 2, the top layer of the first stage of the Kulve Taroth Siege. It's kind of meaningless right now. You can go up there and farm some things, I guess, like a few ammos that you can just buy from the ammo guy. I don't know. Why are you going up there? You can see the boulders, right? The ones that you need to drop from the ceiling. You can see them while you're up there, but it's just so much easier to control the map from the second, not the top layer, but the second layer of the map. So right now, there isn't really a reason to fight Kulve from up there, and I think it would be really cool if they just added like ballista, maybe like restraining ballista, and made it so that there was a point for being at the top layer of the first stage of the fight. The other thing they might add is maybe like giant stalactites with the dynamite attached to it, or maybe like a boulder you can push over the side, something like that, so that having one player go all the way to the top and control the top is meaningful. I feel like that's a real missed opportunity, and that's one of the complaints you'll hear in this list a few times: missed opportunities. Problem number 3, and I think a lot of you are going to agree with this one. No matter what they do with the siege mode and the weapons, there should always be a full set of that monster's weapons to craft. With them having all of the weapons come through RNG, that's been okay. It's a very familiar reward system. I've played it in Borderlands, I've played it in Destiny and other games, but for Monster Hunter, their bread and butter is that feeling you get when you carve a gem off of a monster, and then you go back to the smith and you make a weapon that kind of looks like that monster and generally counters the monster that you carved it from. Without that kind of like reward loop, I feel like they're missing out on probably one of the main reasons people play this game. Is just that, right? So they can keep this idea they have of rarity 8 weapons dropping off of Kulve, just take out like 10 of them from the loot pool, give them a proper weapon design, right? They should look like Kulve weapons, not just reskins with gold on them. Make them look like they're made from the parts of Kulve, and give them a purpose of fighting Kulve with them, right? So I really feel like that was maybe an oversight, maybe the biggest oversight in general for this whole siege mode, and I hope they don't do it on the next monster. I really do want to see them making unique weapons that look like the monsters that you carved it from. You know, when you break the horns, not the horns, the gold plating off of the horns of Kulve, and you can go carve it, and I could be wrong, but it feels like I get more gems from that than I do from picking up the little rewards up off of the ground. When I carve a gem, it's meaningless now. I don't even know how many of them I have. I think a lot. I'm done with crafting the armor, so what do I need the gems for at this point? Nothing, and that's a big mistake. As for the rest of the RNG loot, you know, I think it was handled all right. It's a very straightforward system. One thing that I find annoying is that now you got to break down all these rarity 6 weapons that are definitely terrible. You got to like go through them and delete them all. That's they need like a mass delete button or something. I don't know. But it was an interesting idea. I think the reason that they did it, this is my suspicion, is to really trying to get people to play a weapon they normally wouldn't play. And so this RNG style loot is a way to give a player a good weapon that they normally wouldn't craft and encourage them to go use it. So in that regard, I think is kind of a good idea. But again, there should always be a Kulve version of the weapon to craft, and probably it could have been like thunder damage, or maybe it would have been fire damage, I don't know. Alright, for problems 4 and 5, these are actually kind of similar to each other, so let's get them done together. So for 4, the intro, it should say you can press start to skip, and since it requires everybody to skip, it should have like maybe a little forward little checkbox, so you know if somebody's just not, you know, you can tell that people are waiting on you to skip the intro. I would like that. For number 5, I have players should not be forced to watch Kulve's horns break off every single time. I don't know why developers get so hung up on forcing players to watch cutscenes. It's cool the first time, the second time even, it's not cool. That's how bored I get. That's how fast I get bored of cutscenes. By the second time, I could care less about the little death animation or the horns breaking animation. For the love of God, please give me back control of the game. Don't force me to watch it. So I would like that to be added, a way that players know they can skip in the beginning, and players should be allowed to skip at the end, just like they already have for death animations for all the other monsters in the game. Problem number 6. So I understand one of the challenges of this Siege game mode is that not just that you have 3 lives, but also that you can run out of time. And that couldn't be more true when you've died in stage 4 and you're furiously running back to try and break her horns off before she leaves the area. Now, my recommendation for stage 4 is that once you've reached this stage, you can actually just fly back. You know, they have this mechanic in a lot of, I don't know if a lot's the right term, but you know, they have it in other game modes where you can just walk up to something, press a button, and a little birdie flies you all the way over to the monster. And what they could do is just shorten the amount of time you get to fight her and allow you to fly. The whole point is, I'm tired of running all the way back. Doesn't it feel a little bit like tedium? Maybe it artificially makes the fight more difficult because it means that your teammates have to be alone for a while. But even then, I would rather have Kulve just have an uptick in her overall difficulty and be allowed to fly back than be forced to run 7 miles to get back into the Kulve fight. It's actually very annoying. Like, once you've fought her 100 times, if you do die, or if you're far casting back to change your equipment, which I do literally every time stage 4 becomes available, when I far cast back to swap up to a set that's going to let me cut her horns off easy, I hate the giant run back so much that I'm almost wondering, like, man, I just need a build where I can just use one build throughout the whole fight and not even worry about far casting. But it's hard to come up with that build and be equally as efficient as you would have with 2 separate builds, thunder and then horns, right? So yeah, it's very frustrating, and I feel like it's a very easy fix. Problem number 7, and this is a problem for the game overall, but it becomes even more like prevalent when you're fighting Kulve Taroth. The problem is when you're going to pick up like monster materials off the ground, if you walk near a pod, like ammo, and you go to pick up a material, you accidentally pick up the pod, and then you spit out your old pod, and then you go to pick up another material, and you just pick up your old pod again. It's very, very annoying, right? Like you almost have to get good at walking around the pods and being closer to the dropped material than you are to the pod. You have to get skilled at picking stuff up off of the ground, of all things to be skilled at, right? This is a very easy fix. All they need to do is require that you hold down your button in order to actually change ammo types. And I feel like that would greatly improve picking up all of the rewards that Kulve leaves behind, all of the material droppings. Because right now, I basically ignore all of them. I ignore the gold-plated horns that break off because, there's no weapons to craft, sadly. And then I ignore all of the, lesser droppings, materials that come off of her because I'm tired of picking up pods that I don't want to hold. I generally manage my ammo very carefully, my pod ammo. Slinger bombs, right? Something like that. And I do not like accidentally picking up the wrong ammo type. It's that annoying that I just skip all of the rewards. So yeah, again, very simple fix. You just change it by making the player hold the button down before the ammo types get swapped out. Problem number 8 is another missed opportunity. We talked a little bit about rewards at this point. Here's another thing that I feel like Capcom developers should consider for Kulve Taroth and for future monsters. Rather than having a whole bunch of Rarity 6 weapons that everybody's going to be selling anyways, they should have just had the loot pool be larger with more meaningful options that could have come from having some of the RNG loot be golden armor. And by that I mean like reskinned armor. For example, they could have taken like the iron ingot armor and turned it gold and given it different defense values and then even different decoration slots. And so you wouldn't just be farming Kulve to unlock all of the weapons, you would be farming Kulve to unlock the entire armor set. And they wouldn't have to do a lot of armor sets, maybe just 2 of them, but it would give you something else to earn other than weapons. And I feel like this definitely would have been a lot more appreciated than just having a bunch of blue weapons that were reskinned that I'm never going to use, I'm just going to throw them away. It also gives Capcom an opportunity to take some of the armors that are never going to be used because they're like not efficient enough for high tier play and give them proper like decoration slots and skills that players will actually consider those armors. Like a gold bone armor set. That would be amazing. Alright, so we're almost done. We're at number 9. This is also going to be a missed opportunity. I really feel like Kulve Taroth has been a lot of fun. It was great, especially at the beginning when everyone was like trying to figure out the best way to kill her. That was the most fun, I think. Here's something that I think that they could add to the siege modes. This is more creative than my other suggestions. They probably should have tried to add like some jumping puzzles, right? When you get into the first stage of the siege, that kind of gives you that impression. Like if you're really good at using the wedge beetles, you can move around faster and get to the cannons on time and drop the boulders on time. But ultimately, it's not required for you to be good at that, and it's not that big of a deal. What would have been fun is if they took a kind of like a page out of Destiny's raid design and had an area where you had to be really good at maneuvering your character in order to proceed onto the fight. It wouldn't have to be too over elaborate, and there could be like a fun reward at the end, like a chest that has something in it, who knows, maybe it gives you a chance at one of the Rarity 8 weapons for the raid, right? Or maybe it gives you a chance at that golden armor that I recommended earlier, right? So this is something I feel like the developers really could do something about, have kind of like an obstacle course for players to go through. It gives us a chance to see who's the fastest, who's the fastest at getting their character to move around. That's a lot of fun. Players enjoy that kind of stuff, that sort of Mario platforming feel, right? So that's probably one of the more out there missed opportunities that I have on the list. But if they're going to have something like this siege mode that's going to last 20 minutes and feel kind of like a raid, right, they should really consider it. It wouldn't be that hard to implement, right? All right, and the final complaint I have, and still a very serious complaint, is that players can still completely go AFK and not get any punishment for it. In fact, the Kulve Taroth Siege encourages players to go AFK even more, because now you don't even have to necessarily break the horns off of Kulve in order to get good rewards at the end. I'm really disappointed that this has not been addressed yet, because there's been the Devil Joe update and now this, the Kulve Taroth Siege update. And it's still a major problem in the game that a player can join with the intention of not doing any of the work, and it doesn't happen that often. At least that's lucky, but it does happen, and that's the problem. A player will join, they will stand perfectly still, and they get the same rewards as everyone else. The game should detect that they've gone AFK, and it should auto boot them. It should also detect if they've not damaged the monster at all, and auto boot them then as well, depending on how far along you are, right? Like if their goal is to just get into the game and farm stuff, I guess, like collect mushrooms like in stage 1 and not help at all with the cannons, I don't know. There has to be a point where it's too much leeching and the player's not rewarded the same as everyone else. That's my personal opinion, especially with the player who has fully gone AFK. I think that they need to be booted, auto-booted, because the host doesn't always know that they can boot players. If you guys didn't know that, you can go to player list and select a player out of there, the one that's gone AFK, and kick them out of the game. So auto-booting people who have fully gone AFK, I think it definitely needs to be added to the game. And maybe they're not prioritizing it right now. Maybe it would be complicated to implement something that could detect that and accomplish all that, like booting the player. I'm sure they have their reasons that it's not already in the game, but I would really like to see that change. Alright, and that is my list. Alright, and that is my top 10 things I'd like to see changed in the Kulve Taroth Siege mode. Let me know if you agree or disagree with them, and share some of your thoughts as well. Maybe you have something that you think that should probably be changed about it that I didn't mention here. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Really? Oh my gosh, you guys! I just want to thank y'all so much!